Detective Sean Williams has been with Los Angeles Police Department since 1993. Detective Williams, did you ever experience any domestic violence situation with the possibility of some substance abuse involved?
Unfortunately, in my career, I believe I probably have seen a lot of that. One in particular that comes to mind, I recall going to the scene of the partner, domestic violence call, man and woman fighting. Neighbors had called in the police, so partner and I responded to the scene, got to the house, met with the two individuals, man and a woman, husband and wife, and assessed that a crime had occurred. And unfortunately, the woman was the aggressor, so she was going to have to go to jail for spousal abuse. And during the time we're talking to her, trying to assess what had happened, she displayed signs of possibly an influence of a narcotic. Erratic behavior, she's pulling off her clothes, in front of us, running around, shouting, screaming. She heard voices. So at this time, based on what we had, we figured it'd be necessary to probably handcuff her for her safety and our safety to try to de-escalate the situation. And as soon as we attempted to do that, for lack of a better word, all hell broke loose. This one was probably 5'4", maybe on the outside of 110 pounds. And it was like we were fighting someone twice her size. And I was almost my size now. My partner was about the same thing. And it basically took us another unit to call in, so 3 officers, to subdue this woman, understand we're inside her house, so everything's confined. So we're smashing up against tables and chairs and trying to make sure the husband doesn't want to get involved and help his wife, so we need to, control him because he was also under influence of what we believe was alcohol. And I can just recall that for the energy we spent just to take that 5'4" woman down, I wouldn't say we were exhausted, but I was glad that we weren't actually wrestling her much larger husband, because then it could have been much more serious. And I'm just not so much domestic violence, but just in radio calls dealing with people of that size or larger. Very dangerous when you're dealing with stuff like that.
Detective Williams, were there any other situations where you noticed some really strange substance abuse that you would like to mention?
One in particular, one of my first experiences dealing with suspects on a drug, what they call PCP, or commonly called angel dust. We responded to a backup call where there had been a major traffic accident, several people injured, possibly some fatal, and they needed assistance. The units responded in taking the suspect, the driver of the car who caused the accident, into custody. And what he had done was, while under influence, later found out a PCP, he had driven his car, caused several accidents as he's driving down the street, ran up on a sidewalk, almost struck a couple pedestrians, and eventually hit a fire hydrant, which stopped his car. Officers had responded, tried to get him out the vehicle. He came out with when I responded with my partner to the scene, we got there just as he was getting out of his car, and he got out, started swinging at the officers to try to take him into custody. But what made it really surreal to me was that he's doing this at the same time his collarbone is exposed from his shoulder. He had broken his collarbone in a traffic accident. So here he is being combated with the officers as he's bleeding out, if you will, with exposed collarbone, to the point at which it required officers to tase him, which appeared to be non-effective. To eventually we had to form a game plan and end up using what's called a team takedown, where one officer will grab a leg, one officer will grab an arm, one grabs out the torso, and in the process take him down and subdue him. And I can remember, basically we were dealing with a paranoid Superman. Someone that didn't feel any pain, obviously, because he has his collarbone sticking out of his arm. Obviously was acting irrational, dangerous behavior, and even after all the horrendous tragedy he caused with these traffic accidents, he still wanted to combat the officers who were trying to take him into custody. Probably one of the more dangerous drugs that I've dealt with on the law enforcement aspect in my 18-year career in law enforcement.
Detective Williams, besides dealing with a person who might be a substance abuser or armed and dangerous, What does a person in law enforcement have to deal with when they're in the process of making arrests? What are some of their considerations?
Well, you're going to want to assess the situation point at which what things a person may have on this person which may be considered a threat. Does he have any weapons? Does he have any type of skill or any type of display any type of act that may be dangerous to you? And even if he doesn't have anything, let's just say hypothetically the guy may not have any clothes on or not have anything that appears to be dangerous to you at first glance. Remember, you're bringing weapons to the fight. You're bringing your gun to the fight. You're bringing your taser, you're bringing your pepper spray, you're bringing your baton, which could easily be turned against you. We have officers killed every year who are killed with their own firearm. Just recently, I'm not sure if it was early this year or later part last year, a Riverside police officer pulled over a parolee, and a parolee officer didn't want to go back to jail, so he took off. The officer did his job to chase the suspect down. One thing led to another. They got into a physical altercation. The parolee allegedly removed the officer's gun and killed him with it. And that happens more than not in our country and in the world we live in. So that's another consideration that you have to have when dealing with people like this. Not only have to make sure that they don't have any weapons, but the weapons that I have with me aren't going to be used against me. So you're not only trying to protect yourself and, believe it or not, protect the person you're trying to take into custody, but make sure that he's not able to use weapons you brought in against you or your partner or to an innocent bystander who may happen to be walking by.
Could you explain some of the special training that you have for making arrests of criminals?
Okay. In regards to, criminals who believe that may be under influence of a narcotic or drug, most police departments, LAPD in particular, offer specialized training to officers in the detection of drugs they may be under. One in particular is called the DRE, or the Drug Recognition Expert Program, 2-week-long course where officers are trained basically to detect symptoms that subjects will display when under influence of certain type of drugs and be able to make a informed guess, if you will, on what the drugs that person may be under. Because certain drugs will cause a certain person to act a certain way, will give off certain vital signs that can't be controlled or involuntary. And as you can piece together and analyze what the person, how he's acting, you may be able to determine what drugs he or she may be under, which can assist later on in the line in some type of criminal prosecution.
In the process of that training period, do they ever cover what might affect a person who appears to be drunk and stoned, but they might be having a difficult time with prescription drugs and having a very bad reaction to it? Do they ever discuss that?
We do. One thing that they impart is that they may be medical reasons, legitimate medical reasons why the person is acting the way he is, which is not attributed to narcotics influence. Somebody with a head injury may act as though they are under influence of drugs. And as you're doing your analysis and your examination, it comes to the point that this person needs to be taken to a hospital and not be arrested, because he needs medical treatment. Someone who's a diabetic and about to go into diabetic shock or coma will display symptoms as though they're drunk, to the average person, or intoxicated. But it's someone who has that training and that can go through that checklist, if you will, and examine them. Will know, no, this person needs to go to a hospital. He's not under influence of a drug. He's about to go into a diabetic episode, which, hopefully now you may be able to save his life instead of taking him to the hospital or taking him to jail. So that's one thing I do stress, that there are medical reasons, there could be medical reasons why the person acting the way it is, and that's why it's your job as law enforcement to determine if it's a medical reason or if it's a reason due to narcotics influence, and then take the appropriate action.